Hello and welcome to our tutorial video. In the previous video, we were creating the layout for our registration form. In this tutorial, we are going to create a backend code. So let's start. So let's go to our register.java backend code, backend class. So the first thing we want to do is, because we are going to be using let's say we're going to be using some classes. We have edit text, we use edit text, we use the button. We also would want to use some classes here as well, which will connect to our application or connect to our layout. But first, let's go back to activity register. I just remembered I would like to add a text view, which what I will use to display the information about that. So to create a text view, you can just drag it on the design view, or you can create it here. I've just created it here, simple one, text view, and I'm just going to end my code. I'm going to give it an ID, ID txt, display info. Let's just call it display info. That's just going to show any changes that we make. So what I'm going to do here is for txt view, we can leave it here. It's not really an issue. So let's go to register.java. Okay, so I'm going to import some classes. I want to create some classes, some objects from some classes I'm going to use. Because in my layout, I used an edit text, I need to import an edit text class to be able to connect it together. So I'm just going to do edit text. And then Android Studio will help you to import it as soon as you're writing it, or sometimes it will tell you to press alternative enter to import that class. So what I've got here is edit text, and now I'm just going to be creating my variables or object variables, which I'm going to connect to I'm going to attach as a handler to my layout. So edt, we have full name. I'm going to give it the same name as the one we created. Now, Android Studio, now when you're creating variables, you know that if you add a comma, it means that you can also, as long as you're not initializing it, you can, well, I think initializing also works, but you can create it in such a way that you can add multiples to the same thing. So edt full name, edt email address, edt phone number, edt password, edt, I keep saying ed, I don't know if I didn't, it's very hard. edt, sorry, edt password, edt phone number, edt organization, edt, I believe the last bit of it is a rank. So let's just check full name, address, phone number, password, organization, and a rank. Okay. Now we also have buttons. So I'm going to import the button. So button, btn register, and then button login. Now, this is what I was talking about. Android Studio would tell you that to import it, you need to press Alt, Enter, and then import the class. Now, I also added a text view to it, so I'm just going to import a text view to it. So txt, text view, and then txt display info. So I've created variables which I'm going to store my layout or connect my layout to. So now I just need to now find my components from my layout and then match it up to this variable that I've just created, so that I'll be able to get some information from it. So to do this, there is a method that we use called find view by ID. Find view by ID is similar to documents.get element by ID, which is used in JavaScript. So find view by ID, and then find view by ID. Whenever you create a component, you give an ID to it. That ID is stored in a file, and that file is kept. So in order to get access to that file, we need to type in R. That R stands for our resources folder. Dot, and that dot gives us different kind of, like a class of class that we can get access to. So you can see that this ID is a class, this layout is a class, this anime is a class, this animator is a class. And then what we're looking for is IDs dot. The first thing I want to look for is the EDT full name. And what I want to do is I want to store this with that variable that I created earlier. So EDT full name equals r.id.edt full name. Let me just add the find view by ID to it. And then what we've just done is we added the handler to it. So we'll be able to get information. We'll be able to do something with that layout component that we created. Now, just do the same thing for the rest of them. So here is, we're just going to copy here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to make copies, and then phone number, password, organization, T rank. It says it cannot find anything that's called EDT rank. Okay, let's go to our activity register and see what name I gave it. Oh, okay, I gave it EDT number. It should be EDT rank. So we're going to our register.java. It should be fine now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find my buttons now. So btn register, and copy that here, and then btn login equals find view by ID r.id.btn login. And now I need to find my text view. So again, txt display info equals find view by ID r.id.txt. So all I'm doing is I'm just attaching a handler to my components that I created in my layout. Okay, so if you managed to get to this far, we are nearly there. I would say we are 65% there. 65% there. All we've done is we've created variables from these classes that we have, objects from these classes that we have, and then we are just attaching them to our layout components that we created. We're finding them, and we're saying that we're going to refer to in this from now on, and we're going to use it to get some information, do whatever we want to do to it. Okay. Next thing I would like to do now is my next step is when the user clicks on the button register, obviously you want the button to respond, you want something to happen. So to do that, we do button register dot set on click listener new view on click listener. So Android Studio creates this method for you. Now this method is used if you want your button to do something. There's an action, so you're attaching an action to your button. So when we click on our button, what do we want to happen? Well, the first thing we want to do is want to check to make sure that the fields are not empty. Do you understand? We don't want a user to submit an empty field. So what we want to do is, first of all, we need to get whatever information is in the form, and then check to make sure that it's not empty. Now, how do we do that? Well, now that we've managed to get attach a handler to this, we can use these variables to now check or to get characters or to get text from those specific fields. So to do that, I'm going to create a string. I'm going to call this string str full name, because I want to get whatever text is inside that box and then store it as a string, because I want the user to enter a string. So what we do here is a string str full name and then do edt full name. Now these class objects comes along with methods. Now one of the methods we're going to be using is get text. Now get text means that it would return whatever is currently entered in the text, and we're going to convert it into a string again, because we want all our input from the user to be in strings. So all I'm doing is just making a copy of it rather than repeating myself over and over and over again. I'm just going to be changing this to EDTE email address. EDTE organization, and just call this organization, EDTE password, and then str. What's the next one? Rank. Okay, rank. Str rank. And I think the last one that we want to get is the phone number. So str phone number. Okay, so now we are saying that when the button is clicked, get all the information inside these fields, and then we're storing those information in there into a string variable. Now, what we want to do is now we want to create an if and else statement, which is going to check that the fields are not empty. Now, we can either do this by saying an if. First, we want to do is check, is the full name empty? If the full name is not empty, okay, check, is the email address empty? Is the organization empty? Is the password empty? Is the rank empty? Is the phone number empty? We can just do this quite simple and in an easy way of doing it. All we have to do now is we can just do this. If str full name dot is empty is a method that's provided along with the string variable or object variable. And again, we'll do the same thing again. Str email address dot is empty, and str rank dot is empty. So all we're doing is we're just saying that check to make sure that these things are not empty, and then the and is as how we check to make sure. It's just we're saying that this has to be true, this has to be true, this has to be true. If all of them are true, then execute the code. So we're doing str password, let's do organization, and str password, let's do dot is empty, and then str phone number dot is empty, and str. So we have full name, email address, rank, organization, password, phone number. Is that all? So we had more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. And then what we want to do is if they are empty, we want to now let the user know that all the fields are required. You can't submit your form without inputting what is expected. So to show information to the screen, remember the txt display information, the text view that we created, we can just make reference to that. We can just say txt display info dot, and then if we have a set text, we also have a get text. So get set text, and we're going to say all fields required. Else, we just want to register the user. That's all we have to do. So this is a simple way of how we're actually creating our registration. Now, if you want to know how to create a user login with a fixed password, etc., there's a tutorial that I have already created already. But this purpose is we're registering a user to a database. So let's go for it. So next thing we want to do here is, if the user is successfully registered, we would like to actually add the user. Now, what we can actually do is we want to make sure that a user does not register with the same email address like 5 times. If we just add the register, we just add the user, we will end up with 5 users with the same email address. Now, email addresses are very unique. You can't have the same email address. That's why every time I go on I'm trying to create a new email address, I have to give a different name of what the email address is supposed to be. So what we need to do is we need to now create another check to make sure that that email address does not exist. Now, to do that, let's go back to our activity register, our DB Connect, because we've created an add user already. We have an update user, we have a delete user. What we can actually do is we can actually do one which will check to make sure that the user, if the user already exists. If the user already exists, we don't want to add a user who exist in the database. I don't think that it's nice for us to do that. at all. It's not nice for us to do that at all. So what we want to do is we can write a function which will use that function to check that that user doesn't, exist, because we don't want to add multiple users with the same thing inside the database. So what we want to do here is we want to create a method. But before we do that method, I want to show you what kind of issues we can have if we just add a user to the table. So we'll create that method afterwards in another video. I'll show you how to create that method in that video. But let's just continue with just allowing the person to just add register anyways. So what we have here, the next thing we want to do is, if the user has filled out all of this information, we want to be able to add the user to the database. So to do that, we just have to create an object from our users class. Object, let's say u1 equals new users. And then it's telling us that, oh, in order to add a new user, you need to give an ID, full name, a string email address. Now remember that we don't enter the IDs ourselves. So what we now need to do is go back to our users.java and then create another constructor, but this constructor will not request us to add an ID, because IDs are meant to be generated by the database automatically, by the table automatically. So we'll create another constructor, just like how we created the previous constructor, without an ID, because we don't want to add an ID to it. So when we go back to our register.java, we can just, it will give us two options of how we can construct our object. So in this case, we're going to take the second one, which is the one where we're not going to enter an ID. And all we're going to have to do now is just put str full name, str email address, str organization, str phone number, str password, str rank. And that is how we've created a new object. So we've created a new object of this user. And then all we have to do in this case is something that we need to do at the top here is we need to create an instance of our SQLite database. So in order to create an instance, all we're going to do here is we can do it at the top here. We can just do SQLite database DB. So we just created an instance of that. And then next thing we need to do is we need to set that, let's say DB equals new SQLite helper, and then pass in this. That's the context that we're working with. So it's not meant to be SQLite database. I'm used to creating SQLite, but it's meant to be DB connect. Let's see why it's given us. So the reason why I'm getting an error is because I'm creating it wrong. Let me just take away this SQLite database. It's meant to be DB connect, because I'm used to creating in that I usually write in a different way. So DB connect, DB equals new DB connect, and then the context is this. So we can just use this throughout. And now what we want to do is we want to use that DB now to connect or connect to that to our database. So what we can do here is once we click on button register, after we've done the users, we want to do DB dot let's say you want to call it where is it? DB dot add user. We can just pass in this user one. And then we want to do if, because remember when we did ours, we created a true or false. So what we want to do is we want to store whatever is returning back is a Boolean. So Boolean result. Actually, let's go back. Let me show you a way of how we can actually get that done. When we did the add user, we didn't actually add a DB thing to it. So if you go back to a DB Connect, when we did the add users, I didn't add any end results, but you can add that if you want to do it in such a way. I'll just leave it just like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put txt display info, and I'm going to do set text, and then I'm going to do successfully registered. So this is how we have managed to create our button register, which will allow a person to register for our database. So let's run it and see how it works. So to run your application, all you have to do is go to AVD Manager, and then you can create a new virtual device. If you don't know how to create a virtual device, just click on create virtual device, and then you have the option to select which device you're trying to create. In my case, it's already giving me Pixel 2, so I'm just going to go with Pixel 2, click on next. You have to download one of these because I've already got one already. I don't need to download, but for you, for your first time user, you have to download one of these. Once it's finished and you click on next, you'll be given this page where you can change the Android virtual device name, the orientation as well. If you click on finish, it will create a new one for you. I already have one created, that's why you can see it here. So to run it, all I have to do is click on play. And when I click on play, my application would run. So it's going to take a few seconds to load. So